Alright, looks like we're live. Hello everyone and welcome to yet another Zozin session. How about that? Bet you didn't expect that shit to happen yet again. So let's make a little bit of an announcement because I promised the to people on Discord that I'm going to be streaming, so let's actually fulfill the promise. So this is going to be a red circle live on Twitch, right? And what we're doing today, we are continue developing a compiler in Python. So also need to do something like https twitch.tv/zozing, and I'm also going to ping everyone. Not everyone, only the people who subscribed to be pinged. Of course, I'm not going to do at everyone. I'm not some sort of a monster or something. Lindra Braga, Vibe Coder, Callum Betka, MM2PL, hello everyone, welcome to Epic Streamers. As I promised, today we're having an Epic Streamers, and we continue developing our programming language called Porth, right? So it's a stack-based programming language. My god, I only started, people already throwing money at me. Hello, Carrot91, thank you so much for 10 months of tier 1 subscription. Thank you, and welcome to our Epic Porth Club. That's right. So, yeah, so basically this is the stack-based programming language, and you can find the source code of this thing in the description for people who's watching on YouTube, and for people who's watching on Twitch, you can find that in the chat. Just do a project command and you will be redirected to the source code of the project. Let's take a look at the description. And okay, so in the description I'm going to keep two links for now, the Porth source code and the Porth development playlist. So hello Irish Bruce, Mr. Dev, MKVitis, Vibe Coder, hello, welcome everyone. So what we're going to be doing today, so today I'm going to just go through the features that I want you to implement for the compiler before we'll start working on self-hosting. And the first feature that I want you to implement is a safety mechanism for macros. So let's take a look at the macros themselves in our language, because the macros themselves in our language are rather interesting. Okay, so full Porth, right? So essentially, this is, as any stack-based programming language, you can put some stuff on the stack and you can sum up those things and you can print them, right? So imagine that you don't like to do plus and print all the time. You want to have some sort of a shortcut. Let's say instead of plus and print, you want to do a plus p, and that means you sum up two elements on the stack and you simultaneously print them. So to create such macro, you use a keyword macro plus p, and you say that this macro is basically plus print. And there we go, you created plus p macro that automatically sums two numbers and print them. So we can even see if this entire thing works. We're going to simulate this program, and as you can see, it did 30, right? So it's quite convenient, it's quite cool, and furthermore, it even supports recursive execution. But here is an interesting thing. We don't have any mechanism to stop this recursion, like at all. There is no compile time condition, and there is no limitations on how many times you can expand this macro. And this is precisely what I want you to implement today, right? Because otherwise, like, it will basically keep expanding until it consumes your entire memory. So I have to kill it right away, right? Because as you can see, this macro is like keeps growing. It keeps adding more and more tokens to the final stream of tokens, and eventually it will just consume whole memory, and it's just like your entire system is going to die. So one of the things I want you to implement for quite some time is some sort of like a depth of expansion. So maybe after thousands of expansions, I want the compilation process to stop and die and tell the user that there's might be something wrong with your macro because it keeps expanding beyond the limit. So maybe you forgot to do something, or maybe there's some problems. I'm just look into that. And of course, maybe the developer developer wanted the macro to expand for such a long period of time, so the depth of the expansion is of course going to be customizable. So we're going to have a flag that lets the developer customize, like I want this macro to be expanded millions of times, right? So it's some sort of like a safety prevention mechanism. So that's basically the feature that I wanted to have. I was thinking about this feature since the day I implemented the macro. It just didn't have time to do that. So we're going to be doing that today. So hello everyone, my name is Soime, apparently potatoes, Superina, Gman 2001, hello, welcome. So we got another sub, LL Zor, thank you so much for 10 months of Twitch Prime subscription, thank you, and welcome to our epic macro club. How about that? Pigeon PI3, hello, welcome. So Wipecoder asks, are you compiling into a binary or into a script? I'm actually compiling, so there's two modes of the compilation for this language. The first mode is the simulation mode, like this one. So in a simulation mode, we literally just interpret the source code. We just parse everything and we just iterate through the tokens and we just interpret them. There is a second mode, and the second mode is compilation mode. And look what's going to happen. First thing it does, it generates foo.asm. It generates assembly file. And you can even take a look at that assembly file. So this entire source code that you see at the top got compiled down to a sequence of processor instructions that look like this. Then the second thing that happened in the compilation mode is this assembly file got compiled with NASM. And NASM is one of the famous x86-64 compilers. So with this thing, you can find this stuff here. And for everyone who's interested in the YouTube video, I'm going to put that in the description as well. So NASM compiler. There we go. And after that, we linked the object file that got generated by NASM with the GNU linker. And the result is a native executable. So if you take a look at foo, right, it's ELF 64-bit, least significant byte executable, x86-64, statically linked and not stripped. Statically linked executable, statically linked. Right, so it doesn't even depend on anything, right? It doesn't depend on anything. Just a second, LDD, foo, and as you can see, it's not a dynamic executable. And if you run this entire thing, it prints 30, the same thing as it would print when you simulate it, right? So we have two modes. You have interpreted mode for sandboxed environment, if you want to like observe the behavior of the program, and the compiled mode, a very unsafe mode that actually lets you manipulate like with bits on a very low level, right? And all of that is done using a Python script, right? We're generating assembly code with a Python script. But streamer, it's called an assembler, not a compiler. Yeah, probably. There's another additional thing of confusion between like assembly and assembler. So as far as I know, in English, right, assembly is a language and assembler is a tool that takes assembly and translates it into the native code, right? So there's two separate words in English language, assembly and assembler. Do I understand that correctly? Here's the interesting thing. In Russian language, we call both of the concepts assembler. Right. So, and every time I talk about assembly and assembler in English, I have shit ton of confusion. Oh, people say that in Polish as well. Okay, so apparently it's a Slavic thing. So, yeah. And it was extremely confusing for me when I started to speak English, and people were using words like assembly and assembler, and I was like, what's the difference between them? What's the assembly, assembler? What, like, there's one word. Why do you need several words for this kind of stuff? Same in French as well. Nice. Is file.write in Python lazy? Because it may take a lot of time if you Porth file a few thousand lines of code. Well, I'm not really sure what you mean by lazy. You mean buffered? So I don't think it's that big of a deal. So we generated like quite a lot of code, I think, for rule 110. And it was rather fast. So far I didn't experience any problems with the compilation process, right, in terms of performance. I only experienced problems with the simulation mode in terms of performance, but never with the compilation mode. So when I experience problems with the compilation mode, I think I will look into that. But so far, only simulation mode had troubles. Cheers, by the way. All right, let's go ahead and implement the safety mechanism for the macros. So how are we going to be doing all of that? One of the things we can do is we can basically forbid the macros to refer to themselves, right? We can do that, but it's not particularly fruitful in my opinion, because you can have, how to say that, a secondary, like, I forgot the word, how is it called in English? When instead of a single thing, you have actually two things that refer to each other, right? You have a macro foo that refers to bar, and you have a macro bar that refers to foo, right? And if you just forbid the macros to refer to themselves, well, it's not going to catch this sort of situation, right? And furthermore, here's an interesting thing. Even if we somehow will build a system that builds a graph of macros, right? It builds the graph of macros, it does the BFS, and it finds all of the cycles in that graph, and it, warns you that you have a cycle or something like that. This will not prevent yet another interesting situation. Imagine that you have something like this. You have a macro foo that includes the file foo.porth, and then you're trying to expand it. So you see, this is the current file foo.porth. You expand foo, and it expands into include, which expands into itself, which contains the foo. And you see, so you can have this recursion not only between two macros, but also between macro and include, right? So macro and include can cross-refer to each other and basically do like a huge macro bomb. And that thing is even more difficult to, to catch. Right, this thing is even more difficult to catch. And this actually demonstrates that there is a deep connection between macros and includes. Right, include is just a macro expansion with the body of a file. Right, so usually macro has a body that is something like this. This is a body of a macro. But in case of includes, the body of the macro is just located in a different file. So include is basically a single macro expansion. Right, so it's pretty much the same thing. I was thinking, how can we implement the safety mechanism? And one of the things I have in mind is to introduce a notion of expanded counter. Let's take a look. So essentially, we're dealing with a stream of tokens, right? We're dealing with a stream of tokens. Let's take a look at the token. There you go. So token has a particular type. Token can be a word, integer, string, character, keyword. It has a location in the file, and it has a particular value. If it's an integer, it has an integer value. If it's a string, and so on and so forth. So what I want to do, I want to expand this definition with expand it, right? Expand it, and it's going to be an integer. So look, if you have a macro foo, right? It has some sort of a definition, right? Then you use this macro. When you parse this entire thing for the first time, this specific token is going to have expanded counter equal to 0. Then, if we expand this entire thing, we replace this token with this thing, right? And the expanded counter of this token is going to become 1, and expanded token of this token, the expanded counter for this token is also going to become 1. Then this thing gets expanded again, which automatically increments the counter for this one. So, and essentially, by looking at that expanded counter, we know how many times a particular macro was expanded or a particular file was included. Right, and if we encounter a token that we're about to expand and its expanded counter is greater than a particular threshold, we throw a compilation error. So I think that's the easiest way to actually approach this kind of thing, and it actually includes both macro mechanisms and include mechanism. Right, you just basically keep tracks how many times you expanded that token. Right, so I think that's a pretty good solution. Right. So you would like to implement a mechanism to exit macro whenever needed. We don't have that mechanism yet, but we're going to have it in the future, but not right now. And since we don't have it right now, we need some sort of a way to actually throw an error if we somehow made a mistake and created, infinitely expanded macro. So somebody in the chat asked whether the doll in the background is dabbing, and the answer is yes, it is dabbing. So macro bomb. Yeah, it is a macro bomb. Alrighty. So I suppose one of the things I can do is I can create expanded, and by default I can initialize it with 0. That way I'm pretty sure this won't break anything. Right, this won't break anything. Where's my porth.py? Didn't I save it? Okay. So, and let's actually run the tests and see if it actually, doesn't break anything. So far, so good. Nothing is broken, which is very, very nice. Which is very, very nice. And now, when I'm about to expand some shite, where are we expanding things? I think we're expanding everything in compile tokens to program. Right, compile tokens to program, here it is. We encounter a word. This one is very interesting, look at that. We encounter a word, and that word is located in macros, and we take the tokens of the macros, right? We take the tokens of the macros and essentially append it to the R tokens. Oh shit! I want to be able to actually clone these tokens so I can update their expanded things. Right. How can I do that? Is there any easy way to clone the object in Python? So I actually not a Python developer, so I don't really know how to do that. Python clone object, right? Because that's literally what we have to do. We have to like clone it. So there is a copy, which is already nice. Shallow and deep copy operations. Assignment statement in Python do not copy objects. They create bindings between target and object for collections that are mutable or contain blah blah. Okay. Returns a shallow copy. I suppose the shallow copy just copies the objects themselves, but not the inner fields, right? Not the inner fields. And I'm not really sure if we need to copy the inner fields, if you know what I'm talking about, because inner fields are like... yeah, I don't think we need to copy them, so it should be all right. So let's go ahead and just like do that. I'm gonna do map, and I'm gonna simply copy each individual thing in here. And after we copy it, I wanna just bump its what? I wanna bump its expanded counter, right? So maybe it would be nice to have some sort of a function, expand macro, right? Expand macro, where you would accept a macro, right? So this is the macro, and it will give you the list of the tokens, right? It gives you the list of the tokens, and we're also going to accept like expanded counter in here, and it will be automatically incremented. All right, so let me see. So we can do something like result. I take macro tokens and I map it with copy, right? So I map it with copy, and then for each token in result, I do token expanded equal expanded but +1, right? And after that, I just simply return the result. So I want to have a function like this. It takes a macro, how many times we already expanded, you know, a particular token, and we just copy all of these tokens and just increment the expanded. So now, what I can do is I want to do, oh my god, Emacs. What are you doing? What are you doing, Emacs? Expand macro, right? Expand macro. And what is the expanded counter in this particular case? So it has to be located within the token. So it's a token expanded, right? Token expanded. Okay. All right. And so we only did that for this thing, right? We only did that for this thing. And now we need to do that for the includes. Right. Okay, so let me see if this entire thing doesn't break. Okay, so everything is broken. What the fuck? Let me see. Copy is not defined. Apparently, it is located in a copy thingy. So we have to from copy import copy. Import copy to. So it still breaks for whatever reason. Map object is not reversible. Oh, okay, that's very interesting. This is because I have to turn it into a list, right? Otherwise, it's not gonna really work. Okay, so, and something breaks in here. An expected simulation input. I'm really glad that we have some sort of tests, right? I'm really glad that we have some sort of tests. So expected hello world and all right, so something is completely broken, which is really, really weird, and I'm not really sure why everything is broken right now. So let's actually try to run just hello world and see what is going on. Right, so this is the simulation tests. What is hello world? So it's something with the comments. Okay, so let's run the comments then. Porth by simulation tests comments.porth, right? And it didn't print anything, but if I try to compile the entire thing and run the entire thing, it also doesn't print anything. Okay, so I'm really confused actually. If I take a look at tests, comments, assembly, right? So it doesn't have anything, it just pushes. Okay, maybe we just lost some tokens. Maybe we just lost some tokens. This is really, really weird. Because, like, okay, I expand the macro, so, and then I just return this entire thing. It feels like we just straight up lost the macros. That's what it feels like. So, okay, I may take a look at the final result, I suppose. Oh, maybe I should actually force this thing in here. Maybe I should force it in here, and that will make it. Okay, so now it works. I should have actually forced it here and then start modifying the object and stuff like that. Okay, so that makes sense. And if I try to run the tests, tests seem to be passing right now. Okay, that's actually pretty great. So we have a pretty extensive test of suite of tests. Sorry, my brain is not working properly right now. All right. So now I want to do the same thing, but for the includes. So we need to find the include keyword. All right. So, and this is where we do that. Okay, this is actually pretty cool. This is actually pretty cool. And it's kind of the same thing, right? It's kind of the same thing, is that in a Lex file, we have to probably pass the expanded, and when you lex it, this entire thing should actually use that expanded. Oh, that's actually pretty cool. Okay, so can I just go ahead and take a look at this thing? So expanded integer equal 0 initially, and then we lex the lines, right? So, all right, that's pretty cool. So maybe we can assign this to a result, and then for a token. For a token in result, we're gonna do token expanded equal expanded. Whether it's a +1 or not is actually a pretty interesting question. Like, I feel maybe the caller of the lex file function should increment the +1. Yeah, I think so. I actually think so. Let's return this entire thing and return the result, right? And that means that expand macro also have to follow the same rule, right? It also has to follow the same rule, and that means here we have to do +1, right? We're doing +1. And in the include, when we do lex file, where is the lex file? I didn't see it. Token expanded +1. Okay, that's pretty cool. And I really like that the Python also has the default values, right? So that means whatever places that call this function without the expanded, they're not going to break, they're just going to use 0 as the default value, which is really, really nice. I really like that. Okay, so if I try to rerun everything seems to be working, and we keep in track of how many times a particular token was expanded, right? So now the only thing that is left is to essentially check this entire thing, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Macro expanded, or excuse me, expand macro. So before trying to expand the macro, what we should do, we should check that the token expanded is less than a particular threshold, right? So maybe we can do something like, if it's greater or equal expanded threshold, we're gonna throw a compilation error, right? So we need to do print, and we need to provide a location where this entire shit has happened. So this is going to be S, which is the file path, then a row, and then the column. So what we're going to say, the macro exceeded the expansion threshold. And then we're going to simply exit with 1, right? And as far as I know, for all of the errors, we actually print them to std error. Thanks to Kolumberko, who recently introduced that. I think it is a pretty good idea to actually always print them in the std error. And yep, so the similar thing has to be done in include as well, right? So this is going to be the include. And before we try to do any includes, once we found this entire stuff, right, if a particular token was expanded, the include exceeded the expansion threshold. Okay, so you see there's two places where this thing can fail, in a macro expansion and in inclusion. So, and for those two things, I want to actually print a different error message. I think that makes sense. So, all right. So let's see if this entire thing still works. And it doesn't. I'm really happy. So file is not found. Well, that's precisely what we expected, didn't we? So, oh, we don't have an expanded threshold. Okay, so we have to introduce it somewhere. To where should I introduce it? I'm not even sure where should we introduce that, but so let's do that somewhere here. Expanded threshold. So how many times we should allow the macro and include to expand? Let's say maybe 1,000 of times, right? If you exceed this entire limit, well, you did a fucky wacky. Probably an oopsie doopsie. Probably an oopsie doopsie. So let's take a look, and everything seems to be working. All right. So let's see if it actually catches anything. So first of all, let's test the the direct recursion, right? So here, since we don't call this macro ever, this should not cause any problems, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So this is a Porth simulation full Porth, and it's totally fine, right? So let's actually call it something like a dead recursive macro, macro, and we can do something like dead recursive macros should not cause any problems, right? There we go. And then we do std out, and then we write that to std out. As you can see, unknown std out, well, this is because we have to include the standard library, right? Otherwise it's not going to work. Okay, so dead recursive markers should not cause any problems because they're never expanded, right? Maybe we're going to even put that in here, because they are never expanded. Okay, cool. So maybe I'm gonna rename this entire thing to dead recursive macro, and I'm gonna simply put that into the test folder, right? There we go. And I'm gonna do test record, right? And that will essentially solidify this test case in our test suite, right? So it will create a separate file called deadrecursivemarker.txt, and it basically shows what is expected from that test case. So it's expected to return 0, and the output is expected to be this, right? So something like this. Okay, so let's actually introduce another interesting thing, just directly recursive macro. Directly recursive macro, right? And this macro basically calls itself, right? So, and if we try to execute this macro, right, so it should, yeah, macro exceeded the expansion threshold. And as you can see, yet again, I don't remember how to use Python. Freaking classic. So let me see. Expansion threshold. Yeah. So I should have actually put a location in here, token location of our nation, and a similar thing should be done in the include. Here it is. I can see it with my eyes, I think. Eyes CX. Okay, so there we go. So the macro exceeded the expansion limit. Look at that. Directly recursive macro. Directly recursive macros simply call themselves and exceed the expansion limit, right? And we're going to do std out, right, and there we go. What's interesting is that I would expect this thing to at least print something, but it didn't print anything because I didn't put a new line, and it did. What? Really? Why are you... Oh, this is because it would never compiled. Yeah, it never compiled in the first place, so it would never actually print anything because the macro expansion happens before the compilation. Right, so it's like pointless to put anything in here because all of that just happens before we even try to translate anything. So it's like a preprocessor, right? So it's an error on the level of preprocessor. Well, wait, it's actually said unknown std out, so I have to probably include. But yeah, it still doesn't matter, right? So it still exists. All right, so cool. What we need to do is turn this into a test case as well, right? So thanks to Kolombetka, by the way, he recently introduced a mechanism to actually capture the outputs of the failing programs. So before we were testing only the happy path of the execution, now we're also testing the compilation failures, right, and error messages of the compiler, right? So let me see. So, and I'm gonna do test by record, and it makes it actually super easy, right? You produce like a test case and you record the current output, and that becomes the expected output unless you change it. Right, and if you take a look at this, as you can see, the return code is expected to be 1, std out is expected to be nothing, but the std error is expected to be this. Right, so this is how easy it is to add new test cases to the compiler. So this is actually pretty great. Okay, so let's introduce the test case when the macros call each other. It's called mutual recursion. Yeah, I was trying to remember how it is called when you have two things that call each other but not directly. It's a mutual recursion, isn't it? Right? Am I correct? I think it's a mutual recursion. Mutual recursion. Because it was, for some reason, it was difficult for me to... Yeah, it is a mutual recursion. So we need to create mutual recursive macros. All right. Mutually recursive macros. Porth macro. Mutually, let's actually do something like foo that calls bar, right? Foo that calls bar and bar that calls foo, right? There we go. And then we just call foo. And as already mentioned, this also should fail, right? Let's simulate mutually recursive macro. As you can see, macro exceeded the expansion. So where exactly it exceeded the expansion, it will actually depend on the threshold, right? So sometimes it will put it in here, but if you decrease the expansion by 1, it will point at here, right? It's just like whoever managed to exceed the expansion macro will cause the error, essentially. So yeah. That's basically what it is. All right, so let's put that into the tests. And the last test case that we'll have to check is when the file includes itself, right? So we need to test the situation when expansion limit is exceeded by the include. And after that, I think we tested pretty much all of the special cases. So what if happens if your code just prints 1,000 times via macro would not be compiled? No, it wouldn't be compiled. But we also introduce mechanisms to stop the recursion at some point with the compile time if, and also we'll introduce a flag to customize the expansion threshold, right? So just in case you need a bigger expansion threshold. In my opinion, like 1,000 should be enough for everyone, but in case you want something bigger for your special case, you will be able to extend it, of course. Or maybe disable the limit completely. But I think it would be better to actually set a specific limit just in case to check that you didn't make any mistake. All right. Could you also log the name of the macro that exceeded the threshold in the error message? I'm not sure if it's needed because the location will just point at that macro. Okay, so let me see. Self including file porth. Include self including file porth. All right, so we have a self including file, and let's give it a try. So, and hopefully this entire thing will fail. Okay, so I did a oopsie doopsie and possibly a fucky wacky. So I forgot to actually take a log from the specific token. There we go. The include exceeded the expansion limit, as you can see. So we also catch this situation too. Right, we also catch this situation too. All right, so let me put this thing in here and oh, what the fuck is going on? I'm not sure. And also do the test by record. Okay, so what else do we need? We need a flag that lets you set the expansion limit somehow. So the question is, do we want to introduce it right now? Maybe we want to introduce it right now. But before, I need to create the separate branch. Macro expansion limit, right? Macro expansion limit. implement macro expansion limit mechanism. All right, and also let's remove this entire thing. I'm going to push that right into the repo. So it's a KGB plane. Don't worry about it. Hope it's not too loud. So yeah. Where is the do we still have the plane? Oh, probably not. Yeah. Yeah, so the bot is dead. We used to have like a command for planes to count how many times the plane actually flew by. So let me see. So this is going to be the Porth, and what we're going to introduce. So we have different flags in here. So we have a debug flag that enables some sort of a debug mode. We have an include file path and so on and so forth. So maybe we need to introduce a flag for expansion limit or for expansion threshold. So I'm not sure, like I think expansion limit is like sounds a little bit better. Threshold, yeah, let's actually rename it. I'm gonna quickly rename threshold to limit. All right, so this is gonna be called limit, and as you can see, that will break the test cases, right? So if you try to run the tests right now, Porth, hello, welcome to the stream. So it will actually fail, right? As you can see, things are failing because we expect the word threshold, but we now have a word limit. So it's super easy to fix. You just re-record the test cases one more time, and the expected outcomes of the programs are going to be finished, right? So now, as you can see, instead of threshold, we see limit. Right? It's super easy to modify the test cases. Super convenient. So cheers. Wait a second, we don't have a... I didn't include the dead recursive macro? How did I forget it? That's really strange. This is because I probably tried to... That's... okay. This is because it's a successful program and it compiled successfully, and this is the executable that I have to add to the git ignores. Okay, I see now. Right. So let's go ahead and just, yeah. So what should we call the flag? The problem is that expansion limit is too long name. Maybe we should call it EL, or maybe just E. So maybe E is actually a good name. So like similar to I. But yeah, let's actually call it like this. Expansion limit. Macro and include. Macro include expansion limit. There we go. Default, we need to keep the default somehow. So that means expansion. So this is going to be default expansion to replace expansion limit, right? So the default expansion limit is going to be 1000, right? Default default expansion limit. There we go. So this is going to be this. Default expansion limit. That means that we need to have something like expansion limit like this, and it's going to be assigned to default expansion limit, right? Then if we encounter E, right, if we counter E, we extract the next value, and if no value is provided, we print the usage compiler name, print error, no value is provided for e flag, and file is going to be sys std error. I'm going to exit with 1. Otherwise, expansion limit is going to be equal to int of well, we have to do something like arg v, and it's going to be expansion limit equal to int arg. There we go. I think. So it would be nice to, like, even if we like make the expansion limit smaller, right? We don't really know if this flag affected anything. Right, so maybe there should be like a way to say what is the current expansion limit, if you know what I'm talking about, right? So we need a way to say what is the current expansion limit. What if someone provides non-int value arg? The Python will throw an exception, and you will never compile anything. So I don't know. It doesn't sound like a problem to me. Python is a safe language, am I right? Zero cost abstracted safe language with fearless concurrency. That's what it is. So what I want to do is go to compile and Recursive expansion limit, and we can put some sort of value in here. So what is the current expansion limit? Can we just say something like it was expanded, times, and token expanded, right? So the macro exceeded the expansion limit, it expanded these times. All right, so expansion include exceeded the expansion limit, it expanded these times. Token expanded. There we go. So that's pretty powerful, isn't it? Let's record the outputs of those things. So, and if we take a look at what we've got, oh shit. Alright, so I was too eager to actually try to record without even like running anything, so yeah, expansion limit is not a thing anymore. Okay, so maybe I have to accept the expansion limit in here. Expansion limit, like so. This is going to be an integer. And to be fair, to help me to refactor this entire thing, I want to use something like MyPy. So this is going to be porth.py. Hey Tsoding, so how do you find writing something like this in Python? I've never regretted anything more than writing this in Python in my entire life. So that's pretty much yes. So this is, I would put it at number 1 at my biggest regrets in entire life. But hey, at least it's fun. So let's take a look at what we have in here. Okay. So argument 1 to map has incompatible type, callable, expected. Are you serious? So map expected, but I cannot. Seriously? Functions are covariant by their arguments. Wait, according to MyPy, functions, callables, are not covariant by their input types. Are you serious? I'm disappointed in MyPy. I'm extremely disappointed. Like in a lot of function programming languages, functions are covariant by argument and contravariant by the output. So I don't freaking know. So how can we fix that? Can I say lambda like x and just wrap it like that? Is that something I can do? Okay, so this is something I can do actually, so that's fine. So essentially to fix that thing, I have to wrap it into, like, come on, this is like an eta reduction. This is eta reduction, and I should be able to just do that, but because MyPy is not... I want to actually Google that. MyPy callable covariance. Generics MyPy. Common... there was like a common issue, I can see that. Common issues in solutions. Invariance versus covariance. Explicitly, okay. Covariance, invariance versus covariance. But it doesn't, it's only for the lists, but I have a problem with callables though. Most mutable generic collections are invariant, and MyPy consider all user-defined generic classes invariant by default. See the variance generic for mutation. This could lead to some unexpected errors when combining the type inference. Possible strategies in such situations are use an explicit type annotation, make a copy on the right-hand side, use immutable. Oh, I think I know why. For mutable generics, it's the same reason why arrays in Java are invariant as well and not covariant, because the mutability of generic containers actually make it, like, introduces the paradox when you make them covariant. There is like the whole discussion on that. So Java, why Java arrays are invariant? So to why arrays covariant? I don't remember. Oh, they aren't, and because of that, you still can have this like error. Yeah. All right. In any case, so I think I'm getting like in a huge tangent. So I already solved this problem. I can just put it like a lambda and continue fixing the errors, I suppose. Not enough arguments for the format string. So that's pretty cool. Oh, this is because I'm supposed to do it like that. Right, so I'm supposed to just plus expansion limit. So this is the expansion limit, and here we have to do the same thing. Right, here we have to do the same thing. Missing positional argument. Okay, that's cool. So expansion limit has to be put in here. Expansion limit, and this one is going to be an integer. Expansion limit. There we go. I gotta say, MyPy plus PyPy make Python a pretty good language. It becomes almost as good as Go, I would say. So yeah. Because MyPy provides the missing static typing, right, for the developer, and PyPy provides the missing performance, right? So if you combine MyPy and PyPy, well, it becomes a usable language. What's interesting is MyPy does not work under PyPy. Even though PyPy and MyPy actually like fill the holes in the Python, in Python tooling, in my opinion, you cannot run MyPy under PyPy. So you can actually Google up why. Because MyPy is using one of the modules that are not supported by PyPy. MyPy PyPy support, which is kind of ironic, don't you think? It is kind of ironic. That you cannot just run PyPy, like MyPy under PyPy. Does it run on PyPy? No, MyPy relies on type AST, which uses several APIs that PyPy does not support, including some internal CPython APIs. Oh, Porth, what's up? How are you doing? It's not MyPy, it's our Py. Okay. So expansion limit. We have to put an expansion limit here as well. Expansion limit. Our pi. There we go. So everything seems to be okay. Okay, then. So if I now try to run the tests, the test should miserably fail. And the reason why they're failing is because I'm a dummy. That's very strange. Like, I don't have an expansion limit. Did I forget to save this stuff? Expansion limit not defined in capital. You see, it's in capital. But if I go in here, it is not in capital. Is it using some sort of a cache or something? I'm not quite sure what the hell is going on, but that's really strange. Ah, this is because, okay, so I see what's going on. I forgot to, to get rid of that. So let's run the tests, and everything seems to be okay, except for the things, right? So if we take a look at the errors in here, you see it expanded 1,000 times, and for the includes, let me see, do we have include? Include file not found. Self. Where's the self-including file? I didn't see it. Did I miss it? Unclosed character. Am I an idiot? Did I forget to copy our self-including? Okay. Ah, because it's including, it doesn't have E at the end of it. Oh my god, I'm an idiot. Okay. So, yeah. Self-including file not found. Alright. So, and now I'm gonna record the entire thing, right? Mutually, directly. Is that because I forgot? Like, why can't I see the inclusion? Where is this thing? Including, right. File. Oh shit! It can't include itself because it cannot find itself. Fuck. Alright, so I suppose we have to fix that on a level of running the tests, right? If you know what I'm talking about. So here we're recording the thing, but on top of that we also have to add the tests folder, right? The test, not really the tests folder, but I suppose the folder, the current folder for the includes, right? So the current folder should be part of the includes, especially if we are recording and shit. Right, so that makes sense. So this is the recording, and here we are replaying as well. So this is gonna be I folder, right? So this is the I folder, and this one is also I folder. There we go. So let me see. Porth pi. Okay, that's cool. So record. Let's do the record. Okay. And if I take a look at the self-including, there we go. So the include exceeded the expansion limit. It expanded 1,000 times. Right? Expanded 1,000 times, and you exceed the limit. All right. So make the expansion limit customizable. There we go. And one of the things I wanted to see what's going to happen if you change it, right? So if I do something like Porth and then do simulate tests self-including file Porth, right? Self-including file, and I want to do E, and I'm going to say 10 times. Well, fuck. I'll probably have to do something like Wait a second, why it didn't... Oh yeah, I have to do also minus e tests. Tests, there we go. So it expanded 10 times. Okay, so as you can see, changing the expansion limit actually affects how many times it was expanded. Okay, that's fine. All right, let's push that right into the repo. And I think finally this feature is finished. Finally. My God. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, where is my soy? So let's make a pull request for this thing. Hopefully we didn't break anything. Macro expansion limit. Do you use your mouse at all? I do. Here's my mouse. Okay, so let's wait for the continuous integration to finish. Self-hosting. We're not really working on self-hosting right now, so we just need to finish some features before we can do self-hosting. So far so good. The push is done, and the next thing we need to wait for the pull request. Does anyone have any questions while we're waiting for continuous integration? All right, so everything seems to be working. Everything seems to be working. Cool. What is covariance? So essentially, if I remember correctly, I actually haven't worked with this kind of stuff for quite some time. So you have two, generic things, list t and list like u, right? And if t is, a parent of u, right? If it's a parent of u, list of t is also a parent of list of u. Right, and countervariance is when this thing is a parent of u, but list will be a child of list of u. So it's invariance, countervariance. It's a countervariance. Captain Beardman, thank you so much for Twitch Prime. Thank you. Your first Twitch Prime, by the way. And invariance is when, so there's no relationship between these things regardless of the relationship of these things. So that's basically what it is. And the interesting feature of functions, right? If you have two functions from t to t1 to t2, and the second function, so this is a function f, and the second function is u1, u2. So functions are covariant by their arguments, but invariant by their return values, right? This is like an interesting feature of functions. Covariant, countervariant. I keep confusing countervariancy and invariancy. Okay, you know, the fancy words, right? I was really bad with fancy words always. Okay, so let's fetch the latest stuff and merge everything in here. Origin master. So, yep, finally we have safety mechanism for the macros. How about that? How about that?